I've started to get backed up with the stuff I've been reading, and what I figured I'd do is I'd knock off a few of these books that I've gone through in the last, I don't know, 3, 4 weeks, something like that, and I figured I'd give you some views. And let me start out. The first one I got is Frankenstein. You want the definition of suck, it is this book. It's the kind of thing that gives classics a really, really bad name. This book is absolutely horrible. Now, let me tell you, it doesn't have any Igor in it. There are no lightning machines. There's no hunting around and picking up a bad brain or anything like that. Instead, this is a really, I don't know, dry, boring book that was written in the beginning of the 19th century. In fact, I think it took Mary Shelley from 1818 to 1820 to put this thing together. And as far as I'm concerned, she wasted her time. She didn't have to do it. Now, I read the whole thing, and I know that a lot of people in academia think this is a classic. It's a classical meditation on good and evil and creation and things like that. To me, it is absolutely horrible. Now, I read the entire thing, and I'm saying I read it. The only reason I went through the entire thing is that I listen to audiobooks when I'm exercising in the morning, and I came across this. It was read by Simon Vance, who, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the absolute top book readers that there is. So I went through, I went through it all. I thought it stunk. But hey, you want to give it a try, go ahead. But you're going to be really bored. Well, then I needed I'm going to call it a palate cleanser. And the next audiobook I got was The Enemy. It's number 8 in the Jack Reacher series of books. And I'll tell you what, if you're looking for books to read on a beach, you want action page turners, go for Jack Reacher. Go for Reacher, written by Lee Child. This book, The Enemy, it gives a lot of Reacher's family background, his history, things like that. It takes place in 1990 while he's still in the MPs. Really great. And the reader of this is a guy who died a year or two ago, I think, Dick Hill, and he also is a terrific book reader. Now, back to, regular books that you actually read. The next one is by a man named Richard Stark, called Ask the Parrot, and it's one of the Parker stories. Now, Parker, if you're unfamiliar with it, is kind of an anti-hero. He's a professional thief, and in this book, what happens is he's coming off I believe it was a robbery of an armored truck. It goes sour, and he and another guy are going to rob a racetrack. Parker is a really good, tough guy. Absolutely recommend these books. Richard Stark wrote, as I understand it, a ton of books. And Lawrence Block, who's another writer I like, really singles him out. He thinks he's great. And I'm going to say, I think he is too. Then what I did was I picked up this little book. It's by a guy named H.W. Brands. And H.W. Brands, if you're not familiar with him, he's a historian who pumps out a ton of stuff. I mean, some of his best books were, his biography of Grant was absolutely great. He wrote a book about the general and the president. It's about how Harry Truman fired Douglas MacArthur. Very interesting. But he's got a whole load of these things. And this one, The Murder of Jim Fisk, is about a love triangle during the golden age of in New York in I don't know, 1870s, 1880s. And the love triangle is Jim Fisk, one of the really famous robber barons, a woman, Josie Mansfield, and her lover, a guy named Ned Stokes. Now, what's interesting about the book is that Stokes kills Fisk, and there's no question but that he did it, but he ends up having 3 trials. And they're very interesting. A lot of the book is taken up with the transcripts, or, condensed versions of the transcripts from the trial. Very, very well done. It doesn't take a long time to read. And the way H.W. Brands writes history, it really moves terrifically. Great stuff. Now, the next one I've got is one that, once again, I found really, really disappointing. And it was, the title of the book is How We Know What We Know by Simon Winchester. Now, when I picked up the book, The Professor and the Madman, I thought it was absolutely great, totally great. And I loved the footnotes in the book. This thing, and I think that might have been the high water mark for Simon Winchester. I mean, the rest of his stuff is really disjointed, loosely written. The guy would do his best, I think, staying with magazine articles. Now, this book, How We Know What We Know, he starts off with Greek theories, philosophical theories about epistemology and things like that. And then he goes through, it's a kind of a hodgepodge of different episodes in the development of learning and knowledge and things like that. And I didn't find any sort of a thread, a purpose to this thing. I mean, he starts off with the Greeks. He ends up with a discussion of artificial intelligence. Some of it is interesting, some of it is not. But like I say, I mean, you could probably write a book, I'm sure some people have done it, a very interesting book about, how Larry Page and Sergey Brin developed Google. That'd be great. But this thing, it just doesn't hang together. And where you would have thought that he'd have discussions of computers and so on, he really doesn't. He picks up oddball guys, and they just seem beside the point. So, very, very disappointed. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Simon Winchester writes some good stuff. While I was waiting to get this book, I read a little book that he wrote, a really short book, and it was, the title of the book is Alice, and it was by Lewis Carroll. Oh, it's about Lewis Carroll, the guy who wrote Alice in Wonderland, but he focuses on his career as a photographer. Not a great subject, but interesting, very well made. Very well written. He describes, how in the 19th century they developed pictures and things like that, and just plain interesting. I thought, not a great book, but so anyway, this one is newest one. How We Know What We Know. I was disappointed, and I really, quite frankly, dislike including book reviews on books that I don't particularly care for. But, what are you going to do? I mean, there are some books I read, put down, finish and put down, and then say, I'm not going to bring it to your attention. But I figure, hey, let me give you some views on some recent things that I picked up. So anyway, I'll tell you what, I'll be back next week, next Sunday, and I'm hoping I have a book that I believe to be, well, worth your time picking up and reading, and I'll give you my take on it. So anyway, that's it for this week. Everybody be good.